Welcome to The Complete MC, Disc 2, Elements of Songwriting. In this CD, what we hope to accomplish is to go over the various elements of songwriting, getting you up and running, developing and writing coherent rhyme structures and song patterns. We'll be covering various elements of songwriting throughout this disc, starting off first and foremost with how to brainstorm properly, how to use your chord progressions that you've learned in the previous chapters, and how to input these words to fully develop your song structure. Once we have the brainstorming techniques down and you have a full sheet of paper chock full of ideas to work with, we'll then move on to verse development. That is, how to take each verse and tie it together cohesively so that it all makes sense. A lot of people, unfortunately, just write one random verse for a chorus. This, of course, leads us into writing choruses. What is the element behind writing a good, catchy hook? What is the form and the function that a chorus will lend to a song? We'll also go over the differences between similes and metaphors, when to use one or the other, or both, in a given particular song. As well as we'll go over rhyme structures, how you can use different rhymes to either speed up or slow down the song, depending on where you'd like to put your power positions. Lastly, we'll go over positions in a song that you can use to spotlight or highlight your main ideas, and how this comes across in your song and verse development. So with no further ado, let's get started. So now we're going to go over the methods of effectively brainstorming for a song. I'm here to tell you first and foremost that the notion of writer's block simply does not exist. This is a notion that has gotten blown way out of proportion, where people honestly believe you reach a point where you can no longer write, or you have nothing to write about. I'll give you an analogy. Let's say you're watching a jogger. Jogger goes out for a run. Now the purpose of a jogger, of course, is to jog. You're never going to come across a jogger who will wake up one morning, look outside, and say, I really can't jog today. I have nothing to jog about. The same is true with writing. The exercise of writing is to write, not what to write about. There was an exercise that I used to do when I was younger that actually one of my professors had turned me on to. You sit down with a piece of paper and a pen, and for 10 minutes exactly, you just write. And it's incredible. Even if you have nothing to say, your mind will continue to work and churn its way through various topics. And before you know it, you'll be writing on a piece of paper, gee, I have nothing to write about. Oh, that reminds me of this time. And suddenly you have this whole depth of ideas that you can play with. This is one really good exercise to get you up and running. What we're about to outline now, though, is, in my opinion, the single best way to effectively brainstorm for a song. And it goes a little something like this. Whenever you have an idea that pops into your mind, even it's just a simple word or a concept, what I want you to do is to pull out a thesaurus. Not the alphabetical kind like A to Z, but I want you to go through a thesaurus where it's based upon word associations and concepts. It's called a Roget's thesaurus. Say, for example, the topic that you're thinking of is the cold. And you look up the word cold in the thesaurus, and it'll give you numerous associations with cold, such as frigid, homelessness, cold, ice, snowstorm, Iceland. All these words are associated together. So what I want you to do is have a piece of paper and a pen, go through the thesaurus, write down some of these associations that you think most effectively convey what you want to say within the song. Then I want you to take those words and look each and every one of those up in a rhyming dictionary. What you'll have accomplished from this is you'll have a nice worksheet. It can be a full page long of several ideas that revolve around a single word or a single theme, their associations, and words that rhyme with them. This is a very simple process, and all you really need is a thesaurus, a rhyming dictionary, a little bit of time, a paper, and a pen. If you get in the habit of doing this, you'll find that you'll be able to paint pictures with words and have these associations that you never even really thought about or considered before. And that's what's really cool about this process. So that'll be your exercise. I want you to take some time grab a thesaurus and a rhyming dictionary and just start jotting down ideas as they come. Remember, the purpose of this exercise is not to come up with a song right away. It's really more just to get in the habit of developing associations, both through ideas and also associations through rhymes. And once you're able to combine those two, ideas and rhyme schemes, then the song is already half written. It's a matter of just kind of filling in the missing pieces here and there. So now that we've got a few brainstorming techniques down, and you have a full page of ideas in front of you that revolve around a single concept and numerous rhymes that go with that concept, the next stage in the songwriting process is verse development. We have to start writing verses and make sure that it goes together cohesively. A common mistake that I notice from beginning songwriters all the way up to the songs you hear on the radio, this happens all the time, is people write songs for window shoppers. That is, they're not writing a fully cohesive song where each verse builds on the one before and after it. A lot of songs out there are written using standalone verses that are poorly connected only through the chorus. To prove this, we've actually included a song in your workbook, and the exercise we'd like you to do is to go through this song. It's called Freak Show. Look at the 3 verses that are in this song. Each verse basically deals with a negative aspect or a negative situation that somebody has found themselves in. Verse 1 has nothing to do with verse 2, and verse 2 has nothing to do with verse 3. They're just connected basically by the chorus. That is, that it's all a freak show. This could be a very powerful song if we had one of those verses that was written for the entire song, making it more cohesive, more like a story. But the way that it is right now, having only 3 separate verses in there, it falls apart. The song comes across as scattered. It's for window shoppers. People don't want to go in and buy the content of the song. They just want to take a glimpse at it in each verse. This is very unfulfilling, and if you want to write songs that will stand the test of time, that will be appreciated by your listeners time and time again, you have to have a coherent format. It has to be deeper than that. So what I want you to do in your exercise, I want you to do this right now. Take my voice out of your ear. Sit down, open the workbook, and read these 3 verses. Pick whichever one you want. It doesn't matter. Verse 1, 2, or 3. Pick one of those verses. Keep Freak Show as the chorus and the title of the song. And I want you to rewrite it so that you have that one verse, add 2 more verses to it. So break it apart, make it a larger story using Freak Show as the chorus. This will teach you not to write songs for window shopping. And I guarantee you that when you look at that, in that context, versus the way that it is written currently, you'll notice a vast improvement. You'll notice that the songwriting is deeper, it's more honest, and it has more long-term value. It isn't some cheap poppy hit that you're going to listen to once or twice and then you say, okay, yeah, I get it. Okay, so with no further ado, put this on pause, sit down, open the workbook, and get started. We'll be back in just a second. Congratulations! You just finished your first writing exercise in verse development. Like what you've written so far? If you have, send it to us at our companion website. If we think that you followed the exercise well and are impressed with your outcome, we'll put it up on our wall of fame. For now, let's take a look at the verses that you've written. Is there any way that you think you could move the lines around, adding power and influence to the song, giving it a better overall meaning? That's what we're going to do. we're going to look at the advantages of positioning certain lyrics in certain places throughout the verse to add power and honesty to your overall verse. If we follow common time, 4 lines, the power positions tend to be the first line and the fourth line. So for example, if you write an 8-line song, your power positions, that is, where the spotlight is in the verse, would be line 1, line 4, line 5, and line 8. These are where the spotlight is. You want your stars to shine through. Now I want you to take a look at the verses that you've written. Assuming that you did follow the same time structure, and they're broken apart in 4 lines, what I want you to do is take lines 1, lines 4, lines 5, lines 8, and take out all the other lines. Just look at those. Now ask yourself this question. Are these lines the most powerful that I have in this verse? Do they move the idea of the song forward, or do they just remain stagnant? If it's the latter, what you need to do is either rewrite the line, or maybe you have a more powerful line before or after it, so you'd want to switch that with a more powerful line. It's important to understand this concept, because you don't want to have your strong lines in the middle. Our ears are not attuned to listen to it. You want to have it in a position where it gets the biggest bang for the buck. You can see this all the time in freestyle battles. If you watch a good freestyle battler, they'll never, ever throw a punchline on line 3. For them, it's a simple bump, set, spike mentality. You want to set it up using one line, and then come down with the punchline on the next. It's a standard setup and delivery. The same is true with songwriting. Follow this structure, and you'll notice that there'll be a lot more honesty developed throughout your verse. Another important aspect of songwriting is a coherent rhyme structure. Now, nowhere is this more important in any genre of music than it is to hip-hop. You can look at blues or country or rock and roll, lots of other genres of music, and the rhyme structures are pretty simple to follow, the rhymes following at the end of every line. Following some of the greatest MCs throughout history, you'll notice that it's not that simple for them. A true MC has to be able to make use of internal rhymes, or multis, as we've seen in the freestyle course, to further develop their craft, because hip-hop is based upon rhymes. If you can put together a coherent song using these songwriting techniques that we've gone over previously, and make use of internals and multis, you'll be performing at an optimum level. We have to start off with a few words about rhyme structure and the language, that is, how we talk about this. Now, this is fully outlined in your workbook, so I'll just go over it very briefly here. It definitely deserves repetition. Take a look at this classic nursery rhyme. Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. If we were to transcribe that into a rhyme structure, you'll notice that the last line is always the setup for what letter it would be. So line 1 would be A, because nothing else rhymes with it yet. As we go to line 2, go rhymes with snow, so it would also be A. If the second line didn't rhyme with line 1, it would be the next letter in the alphabet, so it would be B. If you take a look at your workbook, this explains this a lot better. It's much easier to see when it's actually written down in front of you. So take a moment and go through that and make sure you understand the concepts. Once you get this down and you're able to go over rhyme structures, you've learned a powerful, powerful tool in the language of songwriting. And as we'll see in the next couple of exercises, you can use this to your advantage in a number of ways. First and foremost, if you'd like, you can use internal rhyme structures to speed up the song. If you want to slow down the song, or perhaps have a better setup, rather than following an AA format, you should follow an AB, AB format, because by the time you get to line 2 and you realize that it doesn't rhyme with line 1, it grabs the listener's attention and it keeps them going through the lyric. By the time you get to line 3, they should be foaming at the mouth for line 4, which will complete the rhyme. It's a very natural experience. When people listen to it, they feel it. They know it's coming. And again, back to the freestyle battlers, they do the same thing. You can feel that 4th line coming, particularly when you tie in a rhyme structure that forces the listener to listen to all 4 lines. It adds emphasis to the lyric. To help you understand this better, the next exercise, we're going to have you transcribe a verse. And what I want you to do is open up your workbooks and look at the verse entitled Broken Compass. Go through every line and transcribe it into the rhyme structure we've already gone over. So A, B, so on and so forth. When you're done with that, I want you to go back and do the same thing throughout each line. Try and find where other rhymes may exist, and see how that adds to the structure of the song as well. You'll start to notice, after you've gone through and transcribed the internal rhymes as well, that there's really a lot going on in this verse. It doesn't follow a very simple format. It actually has a couple rhyme schemes going throughout. The internal rhymes, which seem to go off of assonance or the stressed A, such as I lie awake, my last day, and so on. And you'll realize that there's internal and external rhymes that occur here. And what this does is it kind of gives the verse a sing-song quality of kind of going back and forth between 2 different ideas. Now this fits beautifully in with the content of the verse as well, because it's an old man looking back throughout his life. And he's kind of shaking his head and going back and forth in his mind saying, it really wasn't worth it. You notice that because you can kind of see in your mind an old man going back and forth, shaking his head, looking back on his own life. And it's really, really emphasized using this particular rhyme structure. It wouldn't have been the same if had it been written in a different way. You'll also notice how in the last 2 lines, the rhyme structure's changed. It doesn't follow the same format. And what this is this follows a transcription of a Shakespearean sonnet, or a traditional sonnet, depending on which one you're looking at. Those last 2 lines, by not following the same rhyme structure as the preceding ones, which you've pretty much gotten used to once you've got that far into the lyric, wakes the listener up, and it makes that last line that much more powerful. It adds power positioning, not only being the last line in the song, but also the way that the rhyme structure shifts. So when you learn how to use rhyme structures to your advantage, as well as positioning, that makes your songwriting twice as powerful. So what I want you to do is, you've already transcribed the internal, the external rhymes. Go over it again, and then try and write, say, 4 or 8 bars on your own using the same formula. And remember, you want to have internal rhymes and rhymes that exist at the end of the line with a very powerful finish. Make sure that you're using a competent rhyme structure throughout, and that you're positioning the most powerful lyrics in the power positions that we've already outlined. Now let's take a few minutes and talk about the differences between similes and metaphors. I'm sure you remember back in school your teacher telling you that similes and metaphors are both comparisons, and that a simile uses the terms like or as. Now, while this is true, on a songwriting level, you have to have a better understanding of the differences between these two, and also when to use them. A simile is a comparison between 2 things. Using like or as has a profound difference, though, in a song. Because, for example, if you use the term, I'm as hungry as a bear, what you're doing is you're comparing your hunger to a bear, but you're not shifting the focus to the bear. The focus remains on your hunger. Whereas if you said, my hunger is a bear, well then the focus is shifted from your hunger to a bear. The listener wants to hear more about the bear. When to use a simile or a metaphor predominantly depends upon how long you want to use this comparison. If it's a $1 shot, you're probably better off using a simile because you're not shifting the focus of your listener arbitrarily for just one line. You say, I'm as hungry as a bear, and you leave it at that. Move on. If, however, it's an extended metaphor, you want to have it in a metaphor. You want to take the time and explain what the bear would be because that's where the listener's attention is focused. It's important to understand these two. So we've included 3 verses that you'll find in your workbook as examples. Take a look at the song entitled Lyrics Like A. You'll notice how some of those verses start off with lyrics like whatever. My lyrics are like a sickness. And you'll notice throughout that entire verse the numerous plays on words that have to do with sickness and illness, things that you could actually pull during brainstorming from a thesaurus. The verse itself is a good idea, but it falls flat in the first line because they use the term like. By making it a simile, they have shifted the focus, they haven't shifted the focus. And thereby, you're still thinking about lyrics and not about the sickness and the connotations that come with that. What I want you to do is go through each of these 3 verses and shift it. Rather than say lyrics like a, you'll say my lyrics are. Notice the change that just a few words can make to an entire verse. Keep this idea in mind when you're recording songs, when you're writing them. Make sure that your use of similes and metaphors are applicable. You'll notice in the 3rd verse that it's not lyrics like a. It's another play on words. Lyrics Born is a recording artist. For those of you who don't know, he used to work with Quantum, really talented MC. So it's a play on words when you say it there. But the first 2, you'll notice how the simile-metaphor comparison works a lot better. It would work better as a metaphor rather than a simile. So what I want you to do is try and write something like this for yourself. 8 bars, extended metaphor. Compare 2 objects. Compare your hair to a lion or your hunger to a bear. However you'd like to do it. But make sure that you do it as a metaphor. Once you're done writing 8 bars of an extended metaphor, try and write 4 one-liners that have to do with similes. And then try and compare them both. See which ones you like better. This should further enhance your songwriting ability by helping you to understand the difference between the two and get you up and running and practicing as quickly as possible. Point of view is perhaps one of the most important aspects of songwriting because it tells the audience where they fit in to the overall song. The 3 main points of view are first person, which pronouns being I or me, second person, which follows the pronoun you or your, and third person, which follows the pronouns he, she, they, their, or them. Now, each one of these points of view have their own strengths and limitations. What's really nice about this is, unlike a lot of other aspects of songwriting, you can change the point of view once you've already written the song, and you can do it very easily. Let's say you write a song and it's in the first person, but you want to see if it would work in, say, the third person. All you have to do is go through your verse, and where it says I, merely substitute with a he or she or they, and see which one plays out better. You could even do it in second person, substitute those words with you or your, and see which one plays out. There's been mountains of books that have been written on this sole aspect of songwriting, although I find the simple exercise of just substituting pronouns after the fact to really get you to the meat of the matter fastest. This helps you understand how and where the audience plays in relation to the song. If it's in first person, you are actively participating in the song. You are telling a story about yourself. And therefore, you can have a lot of thoughts and emotions that go on in the first person. Now, this does work as well in the third person, but there are some instances where it tends to fall flat on one end or the other. For example, there are certain observations that, if they're being made, would lend itself better to a third person rather than a first person. So, for example, if I'm writing a song and I'm talking about how I'm able to do something physically, how I'm able to shoot a basketball, I probably wouldn't make that observation in the first person. That's more of a third person observation because you're removed from the story. You're able to see somebody in the way that they move. It's much harder for an audience to grasp that type of concept when you're talking about yourself. It just works out that way. So what I recommend you doing is to take a verse that you've already written, take the pronouns and shift them between I, you, he, she, and they, and see which ones work best. Arguably one of the most important aspects of songwriting is being able to write a catchy hook. Now, it's not solely for the fact of writing a hook and making it catchy. That's not why we do this. Hooks and choruses are very important to songwriting because it's the spine of the song. It has the biggest power position of them all and is repeated several times throughout the song. So you have to get your best bang for your buck. The purpose of a chorus is to add new elements, new dimensions, and shed new light on each verse. To illustrate this point, I'd like you to take a look in your workbooks. Take a look at the song entitled Better Off with a Better Man. This has a nice catchy hook, but it's much more than that. Notice how it's able, the chorus that is, notice how the chorus is able to connect verse 1 with verse 2. The notion and the idea of a better man is developed. It's not for window shoppers. The verses are different in that the first verse is about how some men don't treat their women well. The second verse takes that idea and that notion of needing to be a better man and looking at it through the eyes of one character, in this case the narrator, and the object of his affections. Verse 2 ends with the same idea. In order to keep a better woman, I've got to be a better man. It's pretty nice how it's able to shed a new light in the second verse that you don't catch in the first. And that's really the purpose of writing a good hook and a good chorus. So one more exercise on the CD we'd like you to try out is to focus on hook writing. Now, in the past, we've done some brainstorming techniques where you've worked on various ideas and tried to write verses about them. In this scenario, what I want you to do is the opposite. Rather than write the verses, I want you to write a catchy hook first. It can be about whatever you want, although I would suggest go back and look at some of the things you've already brainstormed about. Or if you'd like, you can brainstorm something new using the techniques previously outlined on this CD. Once you get this new brainstorming idea going, and you've got, say, a nice 4-line hook that you think is catchy and you like the idea, write 2 or 3 verses about that chorus. But make sure that you don't err on either side. That is, I don't want you writing verses for window shoppers, but I also don't want you to write the same verse that doesn't go anywhere several times over. Go ahead and experiment with this a couple times, and I'm sure that after a few tries, you'll definitely notice a lot more strength, not only in your hooks, but also your verse development. That's what's so cool about a lot of these techniques that you're learning, is the fact that you're able to tie them all in. It's a coherent, comprehensive approach, and you'll notice the more you develop one side of your game, the other sides will naturally come into play. Congratulations! You are now one step closer to becoming the complete MC. Through the CD, you have learned various brainstorming techniques guaranteed to help keep writer's block at bay. You've learned how to use a rhyming dictionary and a thesaurus to generate one full page of concepts, ideas, and rhymes to get your songwriting ability up in no time. You've also learned the power of similes and metaphors, the difference between the two, and when is the best time to use one rather than the other. You've also learned verse development, how to write verses that tie in and build upon each other rather than merely writing verses for window shoppers. You've also learned the language of MCs, that is, rhyme structure. You've learned how to transcribe rhyme structure, both at the end of a line as well as internal rhymes. Once you're able to fully understand the power of transcribing rhyme schemes, you are able to harness and emulate the abilities of MCs that have come before you. You've also learned the power of positioning, how every verse inherently has places throughout it where the best line should be. That's where the spotlight is. You've also learned point of view, when to use first, second, or third person narrative to fully paint the best picture possible that your verse can allow. In our next CD, we're going to cover various vocal techniques to get your voice up to its best ability. This will complete your training as a complete MC. We look forward to seeing you on the next disc of The Complete MC.